Mídia Market Podcast começando mais um super episódio diretamente do Startup Summit 2024. Eu sou a Luísa Telecha, âncora desse episódio. Na minha frente, Álvaro Echeverría. I love your last name. Diretor e GM das startups Latin American, right? Da
Correct.
Amazon Web Services. Welcome to Media Market Podcast.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. Very happy to be here with you today.
We are talking here in the converse previous. Esqueci de falar que se você que é nosso ouvinte não fala inglês, recomendo que você saia do Spotify e vá para o YouTube, porque lá esse episódio tem legendas disponíveis. Isso é super importante para quem está nos ouvindo. O Álvaro está aqui, a gente vai conversar um pouquinho sobre a cultura de inovação da Amazon. Agora sim. It is your first time here at Floripa, right?
It is correct. It is my first time, and I love it. I have to come back, but not for work. I need to come back during the summer with my wife and my children. It's beautiful.
You are gonna love it, I'm pretty sure.
It's amazing.
So here we have a really good environment and a technological system, an ecosystem, I should say, here in Florianópolis, Blumenau, and Joinville. You that can assess this type of ecosystems in other countries. Can you tell us a little bit more about your vision? We are in the same level that the others. What can we learn?
I think on many fronts, Brazil is ahead of other countries in Latin America. For example, your payment systems that you have already established here, like digital payment systems, the way the regulation on fintechs, which is a lot of the startups in LATAM are fintech startups, is ahead of other places that we see. So I would say more than learning, you're actually leading the way on multiple fronts. It also, we were talking about a couple of examples of Brazilian startups that have been so successful. And we've had the opportunity to see them born on AWS and grow from little startups to global enterprises. And I'm referring to Nubank and to VTEX, which are incredible startups, Brazilian born, Brazilian grown, and now they're supporting customers all over the world.
Nice. That's really good to hear. And please tell us a little bit more about your work here at Latin American with the startups. Did you work with any startups that are here now at the Startup Summit?
Yes.
Nice.
Most of the startups in the world build on AWS. So we have a lot of customers in all of the world. Our work is to support startups at every stage of their journey. From very early stage where the founder is in ideation, they do not have a lot of money, but they have a lot of energy. We have amazing credit programs. And so these credits allow founders to start to explore and to start to build their applications on AWS without having to pay for anything. And that's when you're starting and you're maybe a student or a small startup, capital investment is a big blocker. And so we offer amazing programs to be able to get you to get started. If your startup is a little bit later stage, we can help you by introducing you to investors. We work with the most important investors in the world, and we know what type of startups they are looking for. And so if we see one of our customers, we have made the connection, and that's another way that we help. And finally, sometimes we find startups that are a great match for other AWS customers. We also work with some of the largest customers in Latin America and in the world. And so we have made connections where we say, hey, that startup has an amazing solution for this enterprise customer. And so we will do the introduction, and many great things have happened. A new customer, some startups have been bought, they get amazing feedback. And so we try to look for startups and help them at every stage of the way.
Nice, that's nice. Your lecture was about the pillars of innovation at Amazon. Could you share us a little bit more about this presentation? Because our audience is from every part of the Brazil, so they are curious about.
Sure. So Amazon is one of the most innovative companies that I've ever seen. If you think about the portfolio of businesses that we have, you have Amazon.com, which is a marketplace. You have AWS, which is the largest cloud provider in the world. We have a devices business with Alexa and the e-readers for Kindle, for example. We're also now doing streaming, and we have our own production company with Amazon Prime. And so there is a very big portfolio of businesses. And the way that Amazon innovates is a mechanism that we call working backwards. What does that mean? We do not launch a product or create a new technology just to see what happens. We first work very closely to our customers to understand their
needs,
problems, their needs, their frustrations, their pain points. And it's not until we're able to really understand that in a lot of detail that we create products and services to delight them. And so that's one of the most important things that we do. We call this like the working backwards mechanism, which is I am first going to know as much as I can, and then I will work backwards from that. But to answer your question on the 4 pillars, we have 4 main pillars. The first one is our culture. And our culture
very important.
is
We were talking
super
about
important. We have 16 leadership principles that help us to maintain this culture of supporting our customers, to make decisions fast. And so we spend a lot of time making sure that we train our teams to understand how to operate. Because if you don't, your culture starts to dilute, and maybe what the founders thought was going to be the culture, by the time there's 100 employees, that person does not know. So we take culture very seriously, and we use our culture and our leadership principles to promote people. We use our leadership principles when we are hiring new employees into the company. When we launch products, it's always based on these leadership principles. And it's not like a formula to make decisions, because many of them are in direct contrast with each other. So, for example, one is bias for action, which means in business, you have to move fast. It's important to be agile. But then there's another one that's called dive deep, which says, no, wait, you have to slow down, you have to study, you have to understand the depth of the problem. And so
that's require patience. Right?
Exactly. And slowing down. And so this forces you to have like critical conversations and look at the problem or what you're trying to solve from multiple objectives. And so that would be probably the most important part, is culture. The other part, I would say, is the way we organize our teams. And we have a fun word. We call them 2 pizza teams. And so the concept is, how many people can you feed with 2 pizzas? And people sometimes laugh because like, well, it depends how many pizza you eat. And so if you eat a lot of pizza, that's less teams or not. But the concept is, these teams should not be larger than 8 or 10 people. You can actually think about these as small startups. We know that a team of 8 or 10 people are very fast. They are very agile. The communication between them is very quickly. As a team starts to grow, number 11, number 12, and number 13, there's more bureaucracy. It takes longer. So we organize our teams into 2 pizza teams. And these groups have a very precise mission. They own everything that they're building. They have autonomy to do what we're asking them to do. And so 2 pizza teams are super important, because startups, little startups, are the ones who are able to innovate a lot faster. So that is the part about the way we organize our teams. Mechanisms, I actually talked a little bit about the working backwards mechanism, which is this whole idea of understanding your customer very, very deeply and then building a solution to help them. And we do it very differently because Amazon is a company and it has a culture of writers. We write a lot. Jeff Bezos is famous for saying that we do not use PowerPoint to do presentations. We write narratives. So let me share with you how we launch a new product. Let's say that you have an idea and you think that you can improve a process or you can create something new. So we have 5 questions that before we even start to think about innovating that you have to ask. These questions could take you 5 minutes to answer or 5 weeks, depending on how well you know the problem. The first question can be, who is the customer? Do you really know who the customer is? Have you validated the problem with a customer, or is it just, I think there's a problem? You have to validate, and the customer has to say, yeah, this is a big enough problem. How are you going to solve it? Is another great question. And so you start to write these things down. And when you have a pretty good idea, our working backwards mechanism has 3 different artifacts. The first one is a press release. And so let's say that we finished doing all of our investigation. We are going to write a 1-page press release in narrative form, very simple language. And we are going to describe like we were launching the product today, right now. That's very different from how many companies do it, because many companies will build the product first.
Yeah.
And then it's like, hey, marketing team, can you please write a press release with all of these specs? At Amazon, we have not even started building, and we are already putting ourselves in the mindset of how is this going to help the customer? What problem does it solve? How does it work? And so that's the first page. Then we have...
It helps to get clarity.
Absolutely. Right? We don't use it to confirm what we're doing, but it clarifies. And many ideas die on the paper because once you really go deep, it's like, yeah, this really is not a good idea. It's not going to work. So it's also a way to self-select the best ideas. And also how much conviction you have, because everybody has ideas in the morning where they're having a shower. Like, oh, I have a great idea. Okay, write it down, put it in paper. It's like, no, okay, then if you don't have the conviction, it must not be that good. Then we have frequently asked questions, which is we force ourselves to think about every possible question a customer would have about your product. How does it work? Where do I buy it? How much does it cost? If it breaks, who's going to fix it? So we are critically thinking way in advance before we launch. And then the third artifact is visuals, and that is just to support a little bit about the storytelling. And so once you have this narrative, some people think this is where it ends. No, that is where it begins. We then circulate this narrative and we invite other teams to provide feedback and to tell us what they think. And it's a very humbling process. When I wrote my first narrative, when I finished, I thought it was pretty good at the beginning. And I got so much feedback and it was very humbling. And I was told, you're not thinking big enough. Your idea is too simple. You're only thinking about Latin America. You should talk to the US. You should talk to EMEA. You should talk to APJ. You didn't talk to this team. And I was like overwhelmed by how hard and difficult it was. But after 7 or 8 iteration of my document was so strong. I had alignment from global teams. And once we have that feedback, then we present to our senior leaders. And that's when the decisions are made, whether you go forward or not. But every single product, every single service that we launch goes through this working backwards mechanism.
And this type of mechanism the project cannot be launched, but the process seems to me very valuable for learning. Your team must be very grateful for all this process.
You learn a lot, and it also, what it does, it gives everybody the opportunity to help in innovation, because Amazon does not have like an innovation team. There's not a group that is thinking, what do we do? A lot of the ideas are from employees who say, you know what, I think we can do this better. And they start writing and the idea surfaces and it keeps going up. And some of the most incredible ideas come from the front line of people who said, you know what, I think we can do better. The other thing, which this was a learning for me, I came from a world where most of the decisions on the projects were done with PowerPoint. And so you would have a big table with all of the executives. You come in and you talk. What about the people who don't like to talk in public? By default, you are now only listening to the ideas of people who like to talk in public. So you're actually not including a whole bunch of people who could be very creative and very smart, but they don't have a channel or they don't have the skills to present. And so when you say, we are going to invite everybody to help innovate and you write it, you would be incredibly surprised about the ideas that come from people who are shy, who are introvert, but now you're now democratizing it.
That's awesome.
And it's something that I did not think at the beginning. And we have been so incredibly surprised. It's very different. Somebody who's very methodical and very smart, but doesn't like to speak is like, hey, write your ideas down. And so when you get to these meetings, nobody can say a word. Nobody can ask a question until you have read the entire document. And so by the time you are done, you know everything about the project and the discussion is so much richer because you've done all of the homework. So that's another amazing thing that we've learned, and it invites everybody from the company to help.
And other companies can use this type of method.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. For the closing of the episode, there is a question that I always ask my guests here.
Sure.
My guests here. So this episode is finite. It's finite. I don't know how to say finitude in English, but there is a time and we need to end.
Perfect.
So for those who want to know you more or know the culture of the Amazon,
Sure.
what can you suggest for consuming? You know, it could be a book, a lecture, or an experience. I don't know. It's an open question.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. There are some great books on this company called Amazon.com. They can search for books about our culture. Another great way to listen to the way we think is to look for interviews from our CEO and Andy Jassy, who runs all of Amazon, Matt Garman, who runs AWS, and just listen to them in podcasts like this or interviews when they think about how they created this culture and how they created the LPs. The other thing I would say is that I would invite them to follow AWS startups, social media. We have programs to help people start their startups. We have credits so that they can start to work with us. Gen AI is an amazing new technology that is coming, and we've put aside globally $230 million
Wow.
to help startups innovate with Gen AI. So if you follow our website or you follow our Instagram account for AWS startups, we are always sharing content, and that is a great way to get in touch with us. Now, if you're around here, there's a booth, and so all of my team is there supporting customers. That's another great way to get in touch with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for share with us and with my audience a
Sure.
little bit more about your culture at the Amazon. We are very honored to have you here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me. And next time I will try to do this all in Portuguese. Muito obrigado.
That's the challenge.
Yes.
Right? For the next year,
Yes.
I'm going to ask you
Tá bom.
some questions.
Falamos português.
I love it. Para você que está nos ouvindo, eu encerro esse super episódio dizendo que você encontra todos os outros que a gente gravou por aqui, tanto no ano passado quanto no Startup Summit desse ano, em media.market/podcast. Tchau, tchau. Até o ano que vem.